outside of environmental that keep people from wanting to drill for oil and frack and do those sort of things outside of the environmental concerns, which are legitimate, of course.
No,
but are there other influences that maybe over-accentuate or over-exaggerate these environmental effects? Are people being influenced in a way where they're trying to keep us from producing American oil?
Yeah. So the environmental is the biggest tool for stopping growth, the biggest tool. The other is regulation. And if you speak to Elon, he said the regulation now to send a rocket up to anywhere, even if you do everything, it's becoming impossible. But they use environmental in order to get people not to do anything. And sometimes I say, I look at some of I know the environmental stuff better because I had to build buildings in New York. I had to do environmental impact studies. And I would see some of these guys that I'd hire for a lot of money, environmentalists that would get you through the process. And they'd be up in Albany, that's the capital of New York, and they're up there trying to make it tougher for guys like me that were builders because they'd get paid more money. In other words, I had one guy, highly recommended. I was good at getting permits. I was one of the kings of. I was always very good, but the environmental stuff was always horrible. They could slow a project down 10 years, 15 years. I had a project in Louisiana, built big LNG plant. It was for 14 years. It was going to cost $18 billion. One of the biggest, like the Empire State Building, laying down on its side times 4, massive, on the coast, on the Gulf Coast. And they said, sir, they're going to give it up. I said, they shouldn't give it up. What's the problem? They can't get their environmental. They had environmental permits that would fill this whole room up to the ceiling. And they said there was one mistake on one little line. They wanted to do it all over again. It's not going to happen. And I got them their permit instantly. And they built the plant. It's massive.
So when you're saying that, there's people that are making money by making it difficult.
Yeah.
Are you talking about lawyers?
No, I'm talking about environmental consultants and lawyers.
Environmental consultants profit off of dragging out the process.
Absolutely.
And
how
do
they
they
profit?
Process
Worse.
How do they profit?
And I'd
off
probably do the same thing if I were them, to be honest with you.
As a
I want to be honest with you.
How do they do that? How do they make it?
Let's say New York, they go to Albany.
Okay.
And they convince people that if you have a certain type of plant on the ground that's this big and in theory valueless, that it's a rare plant and you cannot ever even touch it. You can't go near it. You can't put a building on it. You can't do anything. Or there's a little puddle, and they call it a lake. And you have to go by the standards of a lake. I said, no, that's a puddle. Oh, you have no idea. Guys are filling a little puddles. You have no idea what they do. And and they use it as a way to stop you.
They use it as a way to stop you and also as a way to generate money. I'm curious how are they generating money that way, though?
Well, they get fees.
They get fees.
Massive fees.
And
you pay these guys.
People rely on them as experts because they're the people that they go to when they have to run these studies in the first place.
But some of them are just bad guys, and they're trying to make it more and more difficult.
And they have a lot of power.
I think they maybe had more. They didn't have as much with me because I would get through them, and I understood it. Look, I've done so many they call it environmental impact study. I did so much to build a building. To build a building in New York is very tough. You got to deal with. Think of it: financing, unions, all the municipal stuff, environmental. Of all of it, to me, the toughest thing was the environmental, because they could stop you cold with the environmental impact study stuff. And you hire a so-called expert. They say, sir, he's the one guy he can get you through the morass. It's a morass. It's horrible. They use it as a weapon. They use it all over the country.
Right, but there are legitimate concerns about environmental impact, correct? Like look about the BP oil spill. There's a lot of things that do happen that are environmentally devastating. And you want to mitigate that as much as possible.
You do. Look, I had, during our 4 years, we had the cleanest air and the cleanest water. I view it differently. I say air and water. Remember this, it costs much more to do things environmentally clean. China doesn't do anything.
Right.
When Kerry goes to see President Xi of China, which he probably doesn't even get to see him, but they look at him, oh, yes, we will do, oh, yes, we're going to do that. No more coal, and then they approve 58 coal plants for the next, they build a coal plant a week. Okay.
They build a lot of coal plants.
But let me just
covered
tell you,
that.
though, so here we are cleaning and scrubbing everything, and everything's got to, and the air's got to be pure. But in 3.8 days, that stuff floating over China is right over the top of us.
Right.
Same thing with the oceans. They dump their garbage into the Pacific Ocean. If you take a little cork and put it there, in about a week and a half, it'll be in front of Los Angeles. We're picking up their garbage. So nobody ever talks about that. But in a way, the bigger one is even the air. It's the currents. It's an amazing thing. It's been flowing that way for 1,000,000 years, or long before
We
long
share
before
air
we
with the
were
whole
there.
world. Yeah.
No, if we're
We get
cleaning,
the Sahara dust clouds over here.
absolutely.
We get dust clouds in Austin from the Sahara Desert.
But we get the China, they call it the China curse. We get the China curse. They're bad, and their air is dirty. You know, when I went there, I had a great relationship with President Xi. We got along very well. And they treated me better than anybody has ever been treated. Same thing with Saudi Arabia, a number of them. But they laid it out. And I said, this air is good. Do you know they closed every factory 1 week before I got there from within 200 miles?
That's like what Gavin Newsom did when Xi Jinping came to San Francisco.
He cleaned it up.
He cleaned it up. He got rid of all
Isn't
the
that
homeless
terrible
people.
in a way to think, he cleaned it up and then it became a pigsty?
Well, the dumbest thing is he said when your friends come by, when you have visitors, you clean up your house. Like, how about just keep your fucking house clean?
Can you imagine?
That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard anybody say ever as a governor as to excuse to why you finally cleaned up your homeless problem.
And the day he left,
Right back to it.
it went right back.
Yeah.
But in a way, that was a bad thing that he did because he showed
He showed it could be done.
what a disgrace that was. What a disgrace.
Well, this is the thing that like shows you how foolish a lot of these people that are running these cities think. A lot of these people that are running these states think. It's foolish. Like you're insulting the intelligence of the people that live in that city that are impacted by these people just camping and needles and human feces. There's an app that you can buy. There's an app that you can get, rather, that will show you where the human feces has been documented in San Francisco. It's a poo app. And it's just everywhere. It's just bum crap everywhere.
But let me give you one that you may not know.
Okay.
Which I think you know everything, actually. As
That's
a student of yours, but water, in Los Angeles you can't get proper amounts of water,
Right.
and it's unbelievably expensive. And you might have a house in Beverly Hills, and they're actually thinking about rationing water. Can you believe it?
I can believe
And
it.
I was in the farm court country with some of the congressmen. We're driving up a highway, and I say, how come all this land is so barren? It's farmland, and it looked terrible. It was just brown and bad. I said, but there's always that little corner that's so green and beautiful. They said, we have no water. I said, do you have a drought? No, we don't have a drought. I said, why don't you have no water? Because the water isn't allowed to flow down. It's got a natural flow from Canada all the way up north of water, more water than they could ever use. And in order to protect a tiny little fish, the water up north gets routed into the Pacific Ocean. Millions and millions of gallons of water gets poured. You got to see this. We're driving up, and I had never seen it before. It's like Iowa. It's the most fertile land. Iowa's blessed with great land. Idaho for a potato, right?
Yeah.
But they're just, by the way, some land is good for a potato, some land is good for corn. It's the craziest thing. I love the farmers. They're great. They're the greatest. And by the way, they're getting killed right now.
They are.
They're getting killed because of this stupid administration. But so I see this, and I said, you got to be kidding. I said, you mean you have water? And I looked at it. It's like a valve in your sink, except it's massive. The thing's 5 times taller than your ceiling.
Did you know the center of California was a giant lake?
They have so much water.
You ever see what it looks like before they rerouted it?
I never saw that,
The
no.
center of California, like, what is it, 200 years ago? How long ago did they do that, Jamie? The center of California had a fucking enormous lake in the middle of
So
California.
they dumped it into the Pacific.
Who knows what they did? But whatever foolishness that they did led to the situation that they're in now.
Think of those dry forests that burned down all over the world. The head of Austria said,
Here it is, Tulare Lake, or Tachi Lake. It's a freshwater lake in the southern San Joaquin Valley, United States. Historically, Tulare Lake was one of the largest freshwater lakes west of Mississippi. Show a photo of what it looked like back then.
It's a great system.
So that's what it looked like. Look at that image. Now go to the one on the third from the right.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was an enormous lake in the middle of California. Imagine that.
That'd be much more valuable property.
How crazy is that? But how crazy is that's what it used to look like? And human beings screwed that up.
No, they let it go into the Pacific, and then they...
I don't know what they did. What did they do? How did it go missing?
They said they drained it in 83.
Yeah, they drained it.
1983. Oh, my God.
It went dry a handful of times.
Oh, it went dry a handful of times. Well, lakes do go dry, but that's a big one.
But think of
it's
it,
a big one to go
you
dry.
Could have all of the water you need. All of that land would have more water. The whole thing could be like that little patch.
Yeah.
Literally, I'd say I was with Devin Nunes, a congressman, and other congressmen. We were going up. I was visiting that because they asked me to go up and visit their territory, and I did. But I kept saying, look at this land. It's beautiful, but it's so dry. And I thought they were going through like a desert, like a drought. They said, no, we have water, but it gets... So I looked into it.
What is the fish?
And I got it done. I could have water for all of that land, water for your forests. Your forests are dry as a bone.
Yeah.
Okay?
Dangerous.
That water could be routed. You could have everything. Oh, not only dangerous, billions of dollars a year they spend on forest fires. And, there's a case with the environment. They're not allowed to rake their forests because you're not allowed to touch it. When a tree falls down, after 18 months, it becomes very dry. It's like, like real firewood. It's bad. A tree that's up, these are all things I learned the hard way, the easy way. But when a tree is up, it sucks water. It's wet. I went to they had a couple of horrible forest fires in California. And I said, you had a lot of trees standing. Yes, they were healthy trees, sir. I said, with this intense heat, that you could see they were charred a little bit on the bottom, but they were going to be all right because they're soaking wet because they suck up the water, right? But when they fall, they're like, it's like lighting a match.
Yeah.
And you got to be able to clean. They call maintain your forest. So I was with the head of Austria. He said, it's a shame. I see all those forest fires in California, and all they have to do is clean their forest, meaning rake it up, get rid of the leaves, get rid of, leaves that are sitting there for 5 years. And
we'll certainly get rid of the dead fall.
And get rid of the trees that are fallen that are like so many things this country. By the way,
could you really rake the whole forest, though? I don't think you could rake the whole forest.
Well, you could,
I think you can get rid of the deadfall, but raking all the leaves.
You could certainly get rid of the dead, okay?
Yeah, I think that's the real issue.
Environmentally, they don't want to do that. They said, it's got to be nature and all this stuff. But in the meantime, this is exactly right. But you could have, so it was the Department of Commerce that needed the approvals, but Gavin Newsom had to sign them. I got it all done. Nobody could believe it. It was all done. I said, I got it. You got so much water. All you have to do is sign. And that guy didn't want to sign.
Did he not want to sign because that would be a political victory for you?
I think, no, he didn't. No, I don't think so. He used to say, he's a great president, and we got along. We did. We actually got along at that point. But I think somebody said, you just can't continue to call him a great president. They do say that. But we had it all done. He didn't sign, and then we got on to other things. And I every time I go to California, I said, you have so much water. They don't know it. I'm telling you, people living in Beverly Hills, they turn off the water. Same thing with the electric. They want to go to all electric cars, but they have brownouts every weekend,
Well, right after they made the announcement that as of 2035, you're not going to be able to buy an internal combustion engine in California, like within a month, they had some announcement asking people to not charge their Teslas. Because the grid couldn't handle it. Well, how are you going to handle it?
I will terminate the mandate immediately. That's a mandate.
Thank you.
That will be done, I would say, in my first day, maybe 2 days, because, it's
Let me ask you about nuclear. One of the things that when I've talked to people that have a real understanding of nuclear power, what their position is, it's probably the cleanest, safest form of electricity that we could generate. And that the fears of nuclear power are really about a few disasters, the Fukushima, 3 Mile Island. These are old systems, and that they're much more capable now, and they're capable of making even better systems. But it's a difficult political issue because you think nuclear power, you think Chernobyl. That's what everybody does. They have this connection. They had the potential
or Fukushima,
disaster. Fukushima,
where you're not supposed to enter the land for 3,000 years or something. It's crazy.
I think it's worse than that. I think that area is like going to be radioactive for probably longer than you could imagine. But the point is they're better at it now.
Right.
And that they could do it now, and you can generate power in a way that you don't have to worry about these. One of the most ridiculous things is electric cars being powered by coal-fired plants. It's a ridiculous thing.
So what's happening?
Yeah, that is what's happening.
what's happening.
And people want to think they're being green, but it's...
Well, you look at the way the battery is made. But here's the other thing. We don't have... Well, we do, actually. It's being held. We have certain areas where we have great raw earth material, and we're not allowed to use it because of the environment. And we have areas in California that have incredible raw earth, and they're not allowing, and I'm going to open it up. I'm going to let them use it.
But how do you do that?
China,
how do you do that and protect the environment?
Because the environment's going to be protected. You can do it. You can make a lake out of it. Okay, we'll put back a lake. I mean, something nice about lakes. You can do things magnificently.
You just have to do it carefully and responsibly.
Absolutely, you have to do it carefully. But the problem, China has all of those areas, most of those areas. And yet, when they say go electric with the cars, China is going to be the one that gives us the cars. All of those guys in Detroit are going to be out of business. You're going to make your electric cars over there. We have a thing called gasoline, and we have more oil and gas under our feet than any other nation. I had... in Alaska, there's a find. It's called Anwar. I got it approved. Reagan couldn't get it. Nobody could get it. I got it all done. It was amazing. They were getting ready to start drilling. The equivalent, they think, of Saudi Arabia, one of the biggest finds in the world. It was all set to go. And Biden comes in. One of his first orders were, we're not going to use it. It would have been so good we could have supplied all of Asia with oil and gas.
What was the negative?
And you talk about money.
Right.
The negative was politically they didn't think it was good for them. That's all.
That's all it was. So you don't think that it's environmentally dangerous?
Taking it from way down deep in the earth, environmentally would have been fine.
So it can be done responsibly?
Absolutely. Otherwise,
the point where it
let's
protects
not
the environment.
Well, I think windmills, okay, so they talk about windmills.
Point.
I think windmills are really disruptive. When you talk about the environment, they kill the birds. You want to see a bird cemetery? Go under a windmill someday that hasn't been cleaned out with all the bird carcasses. It's like massive amounts of birds.
Well, they're also a massive eyesore. I went to a ranch in South Texas, and we had to drive past this enormous windmill farm, and it's gross. It's dystopian. You're looking in the left and the right, and all you see is these big spinning machines that aren't even that effective at generating electricity.
Correct. Most expensive form of electricity is a windmill. And then they start to rust and rot.
And you have to replace them?
And then they get abandoned by the people that built them.
Well, you have to get rid of all that material, too. When you replace those blades, now you have a problem because you have to dispose. Yeah. Right. You have to dispose these enormous windmills. And how
By the way, they say
you
can't bury them. So I even question that, but I'm not going to get into it. But they say you can't bury the blades. So you have the blades, and you can't bury the blades. You can bury the blades. It's not going to matter. You can bury them. You'll find areas you can bury. But they come up, this is what I mean, they come up with this, but the environmentalist dream is windmills, everyone. You know what happens to them? After 5 years, they start to rot. After 10 years, you have to replace them. Did you ever look at certain parts of California where they have heavy windmills and they've been abandoned? And they're all different manufacturers and all different companies. And I
haven't seen that.
It is the ugliest thing. It looks like a graveyard almost, a graveyard of windmills.
It's pollution.
It's so bad.
It's
and in the oceans.
It's no different than leaving garbage on the ground.
How about in New Jersey, off the coast of New Jersey, they want to build. The people are going crazy not to build them. But where you have them, the whales are washing up on shore.
Right.
So in 50 years, they had one whale come ashore. Now they had like 18 come in the last year.
What is happening with the whales? I've read about this.
Well, they say that the wind drives them crazy. It's a vibration because you have those. Those things are 50-story buildings, some of them.
Right, and they're 50. Super sensitive to vibrations.
They have
and
those.
Sounds.
The wind is rushing, the things are blowing. It's a vibration, and it makes noise. You know what it is? I want to be a whale psychiatrist. It drives the whales freaking crazy, and something happens with them. But for whatever reason, they're getting washed up on shore, and yet the environmentalists
conveniently ignored by the environmental
but the environmentalists they don't talk about it.
Right.
I think there's nothing uglier. I see it in Scotland. I see it all over the world. You have this beautiful valley. It's been there for in civilization thousands of years, but millions of years, and all of a sudden you have these ugly windmills up.
Would your plan to be replace that with nuclear? What would you do?
Well, nuclear is better. I mean, I think there's a little danger in nuclear, but we had some really bad nuclear. They did one in Alabama. They did one in, I think, South Carolina. They do them wrong. They build these massive things. Then the environmentalists get in. I don't want to go into a long story because it's too long for the show. This show is too valuable to talk about concrete. But they have hardened concrete. It's number 12 concrete. It's harder than steel. It's incredible. They put up a wall, and an inspector comes along, knows that, nope, you're a quarter of an inch. The wall might be 8 feet wide. You're a quarter of an inch too short. I'm sorry, you got to rip down the wall. Because it's got to be poured contiguously, right? You're 1/4 of an inch. I'm sorry, rip down. You can't rip it down. This stuff you can't put a hammer through it. You can't. It's incredible. Concrete technology is unbelievable. What's happened? You think of concrete.
So you think that's an example of overregulation?
Yeah,
pointless.
No. Well, you have an inspector that comes along and he says, take down a $25 zillion wall. These things ended up costing $25 billion. And one of them never got opened. But here's the story. So France does it. France is largely nuclear, and they build small, little, compact plants. And if they need more, they build the same thing and they hook it up, because they get too big and too complex and too expensive. And it is very clean. They say it's absolute. My uncle, I had a great uncle who was a great genius, just like other members of my family. But he was a professor at MIT for, I think, 41 years. He was the longest. When I was in the White House, the head of MIT, Princeton, and Harvard came down to meet me. And the MIT person said, I have a book on your uncle, Dr. John Trump. He was our longest-serving professor. He was a great genius, sir. Do you know how? And he knew everything about nuclear, from math to chemistry to nuclear. He knew it. And he said, someday it's going to be the way to go, but the problem is it's so dangerous in terms of war. He said, right. Donald, someday, and this was a long time, Uncle John, Dr. John Trump, he said, someday you'll have a little satchel at your side and you'll go into a building and you'll be able to blow up New York City. I said, Uncle John, that'll never happen. He's right. He's right.
Well, that was part of the problem
so
with giving nuclear power to other countries, right? Like that was the problem that happened with India and Pakistan. They got nuclear power and then they were able to weaponize it.
The biggest problem in the world today is not global warming. It's nuclear warming. And we have idiots that are negotiating for us. We have a guy that doesn't make it past 4 o'clock, and it's not because of age. They ought to. I know so many guys in their late 80s, and they're better than I said to one guy the other day, I think you're smarter than you were 25 years ago. I've known him a long time. He's 89 years old. He's sharp. He's great. Biden gives people a bad name because that's not an age. I think they say it because I'm 3 or 4 years younger. I think that's why they say it. They say his age. It's not his age. He's got a problem.
2 major brain
operations,
surgeries.
Yeah, he did. Those are not good operations.
And did you see what he did today? He went running towards the camera and made some apology to Native Americans. And he said that's why he's headed out west. Like he's off the reservation, so to speak, for lack of a better term.
It's interesting because during the debate, I was looking over. I'm saying, this is strange. It's just sort of like strange things were happening.
Yeah.
But
he couldn't keep it together. But do you think they knew he couldn't keep it together?
I think so.
Do you think that they wanted that? Is that why, like historically, that debate was earlier than they've been in the past, right?
I think they wanted to get. Well, there's a lot of theories. A lot of people said, do the debate now and we'll get him out.
Right.
I think that maybe could be.
Well, that is what happened.
It's
logical.
I think they
to
also said do the debate now and get it over with.
Right.
I don't think anybody thought he was going to get out. Really,
I don't. It didn't make any sense.
The debate got him out, but I think it's very unfair. Look, you have a bad debate. His numbers went down, but I think she's not doing very well right now, and I think she looks.
Well, I want to get to that too because it's hard to know. Like the whole poll thing is very bizarre for most people because most people don't answer polls. So they read the polls. Then
were
like,
you
who's
ever called
poll? I've
from
never
a
been
poll?
polled.
If
I did, I'd hang up.
I was never called by a poll system.
If I did, I wouldn't answer. I'm busy.
You know how polls are done? I'm going to get myself
Please.
in trouble. But so I really don't believe too much in them. So
2016 taught a lot of people about the ineffective.
Well, they were very
use of
ineffective
polls.
because I thought I was doing well. I'd go to a place and I'd have 30, 40,000 people. Hillary would go, they have 500 people, and they tell me I'm going to lose. I said, why am I going to lose? I had 40,000 people. She had 200 people. But, I have a theory. These pollsters, they charge you a lot of money, too. They charge you $500,000 to do some stupid poll, and they interview like 251 people. I don't think they interview them in many cases. I don't want to get myself in too much trouble.
You think it's bullshit?
No, I think they sit there, they make a deal, they get $500,000, and they say, Trump's leading 51-49. They announce it, and everybody says, oh. Do you understand? I don't think they... I think in a lot... Look, I'm a very common sense person. I think that they probably don't always poll. Some of them probably never poll. What's the difference between 49-51 and 47.5?
Well, it's also a tiny percentage of the population. I don't think it's representative of the overall population. I just don't think
I don't know
is.
of one person in my whole life that ever got called by a pollster.
Exactly. That's my point. So here's my question.
But I shouldn't say that because I'm doing really well in the polls.
But
now.
I think that's...
So this week I happen to believe in a verse. I only believe them if they're good. No. I like them this month. But no, I honestly believe that there's probably a lot of fraud. I had a poll, Washington Post, ABC, in the Hillary thing on Wisconsin. They had me down 17 points the day before the election. I knew it was wrong because I had a rally. I had 29,000 people at a racetrack, and it was like 0 degrees, Wisconsin. And they had me down 17 points. In other words, you had no chance. And I won. And I called up my pollster, who's a good guy, good guy, and I believe he's legitimate, and and some of them are, and some of them aren't. I said, tell me, why did they have me down so much? I mean, nobody's going to believe them the next time. They said they don't care. When you're down 17 points, people are going to stay home. They're not going to vote.
Right.
Because they're going to say, I love Trump, but I'm not going to waste my time. It's cold out. I said, but what do they make at 4 or 5? He said, at 4 or 5, they're going to go and vote. At 17, they're not going to go and vote.
So
think of it. I was 7. This is the Washington Post ABC poll. I was down 17 points in Wisconsin, and I won. It's crooked stuff.
There's a lot of crooked stuff, and I wanted to talk about that too, because one of the things that people talk about with you is the denial of the results. And I think J.D. Vance did a brilliant job the other day when he was being interviewed, and they asked him, did Trump lose the 2020 election? And he turned it around and said, was there legitimate election interference in suppressing the Hunter Biden laptop story on social media? And was that a concerted effort?
Well, they say it made 10-point difference, and I lost by one tenth of a point.
It is.
They say it was 22,000 votes, but look, it was much more than that. And I appreciate J.D. Vance saying that. And by the way, I think he was a great pick. Do you like J.D. as a pick?
I like him a lot. Yeah.
You're allowed to say that.
No, I do. I like him a lot.
I think he's good.
I think he's a brilliant guy, and I think his ability to talk like a normal human being. You did my friend Theo Vaughn's podcast,
right? And
he just did it.
How did he do?
He did great. And he just talks like a normal human being.
Is that why you called me to do this?
No. I was.
He was a nice
once
guy.
They shot you, I was like, he's got to come in here. It's all about timing. It's all about the timing. I think our timing's perfect. Do you even have a scar on your ear? You got anything on there?
I do.
What do we say? What do you got
there? Right over here.
Oh, it's a tiny little mark.
It zicked right there.
Yeah. It healed up pretty fucking good.
Well, it's pretty good. Yeah, it's little. It's not like some of the wrestlers, some of the UFC fighters.
No, you didn't get cauliflower.
No. It was sort of like a top shot. Mm-hmm. The point of the bullet was a little of the ass, but you see the thing's taken off a little bit, but it makes me a tougher guy. The fighters love their. Bo Nickel, he's a great fighter.
Yeah, I love Bo Nickel.
How's he going to do? I think he's terrific.
He's great. He's a fantastic fighter.
He was almost like undefeated in college.
He's a fantastic wrestler and one of the best mixed martial artists.
When is he fighting again?
He's fighting in Madison Square Garden in November.
Oh, that's going to be after the election?
Yep.
So I'll either go as president or I'll be depressed and I won't bother going. I think they're having a fight right after.
One of the things that was fascinating also was the denial of the election results is a pretty common thing. Hillary Clinton famously denied that and she called you an illegitimate president, and she said that Russia put you in place.
Even though she conceded.
Yes.
She conceded the night of the election because she was beaten.
Yes, and it was a thing that was pretty common for people, especially Democrats, to deny the elections. There's been many of them. The Bush administration, the dangling chads, all that stuff.
Well, look at these guys in Congress. All these sleazebags in Congress that are Democrats, they're still denying 2016. But now they don't so much because, they try and pin it on me. You don't hear them say.
But here's my
But they
point.
denied it right up until the end.
My point is, this idea of election fraud is a forbidden topic. And you get labeled an election denier. It's like being labeled an anti-vaxxer if you question some of the health consequences that people have had from the COVID-19 shots. Oh my God, you're an anti-vaxxer. If you say, and what I say publicly, and I've said this a lot, it's not 0%. So if you ask me what is the amount of election fraud in this country, is it 0%? No one thinks it's 0%. I've never met one person, not a super liberal, progressive, far left person or a right-wing conservative. Not one person thinks it's 0%. They think when you